Hello everyone. Today we're going to be visiting the new update on the finally Cardi and Deluzhnoa Awaken slash Enraged versions. So similar to the E.Tevent and Bellinger that we got on tier 1, that we could farm shards and evolve the weapons to become a tier 2. We're getting that for the tier 2 arc bosses, so now the tier 2 arc bosses can become tier 3. And imagine we're going to be getting tier 3 arc bosses when the new region releases by the end of the year to start of the next year. So let's review everything that changed. In case you have Bellinger and E.Tevent, they actually buffed those as well. So those actually got a very nice buff on the status line. From what I have skirmed or gone over, the passive doesn't change, but we do get a buff on damage and status line. So let's start. So the Cardi, first thing that increase, we get more base damage overall. That's a trend for all the weapons. Everything got a buff on the damage. On the passive, what changed here is that now it does a little bit more damage, so it goes from 120% to 132%, the smoke, right, that it releases. And on top of that, it now deals 2.5% of the target max health per second on PvP. So pretty big change, gonna do a lot of damage on tanks now, so it's a pretty big change. It got a status line bonus on collision chains, so a lot of classes, the DPS, the Ravagers, are not going to be very happy with it. I mean, it's an extra damage, and not damage, sorry, CC condition, but overall, it's a really nice thing to be added for the. I think tanks are very happy with the changes overall, but of course, DPS also are pretty happy. Now, let's go for the Cardi Orb. The Cardi Orb is an interesting one. It got ranged add on the status line, which is a thing that can be very beneficial for because range is a very important status actually on Orb, but mostly for the DPSing part. I don't know if it's that important for the healer part. What changed on the passive here is only the shield went from 30% to 50% on the extra health, so it's a pretty big deal, but it's not a huge change, it's just numbers, but of course it helps. So there's not that much to talk about, but the one got an insane buff. It got shield half percentage on the buff increase, which is crazy because it's just like perfect for healers, right? Like it's even more perfect now. On top of that, it got a boost from 50% to 85%. That's not the only change, of course, the base damage and everything else. But that's basically about it. Really good change for the Cardi one. The Cardi crossbow, X-bow, right? Changes a little bit of damage, so it went from 375 to 400%, which is like a 25% increase, which is kind of whatever, to be honest. It's really like one of the least interesting changes, I would say. It did got a buff on the distance here as well. You can see like all damage within 3 meters to 3.5 meters, so you got a 5 meters, 0.5 meters range increase. Which is nice, I guess, to connect more, I imagine, but it feels like underwhelming compared to some other changes. However, the status that it got extra is strength, so that's nice, 8 extra strength points. The base damage only changed from what I have seen the top one, so, you know, not that, I mean, it's just Cardi being Cardi. The longbow is an interesting one. So what changed is got wisdom, so it feels like it's really focused on the support part, on the support side of the bow part. But what changed is really hard to spot when you read this. But now it also, other than just doing the knock-up with the tornado thing, it also removes one shield type. What that means is probably that it's gonna remove one of the shield buffs on the enemy. So it's actually really interesting because that can remove literally like a 50k, 80k shield from the enemy, which is gonna be definitely a big changer on like one-shotting that enemy. So if you catch the enemy on your skills, right, on the knock-up, maybe someone else can finish them and it's gonna be like much easier. I actually think it's the biggest change of all the weapons. It's a very small change, but on with the way the meta is going right now, with everyone have 1 billion shields, mega high shields, this might be a game changer, and I actually think we're gonna start seeing more Deluzhnoa, but it's just a guess, you know. Moving on. The Deluzhnoa daggers also got an insane buff, in my opinion. It got 8 wisdom, which is kind of random, but it's actually really strong at the same time because it's just flat status. The weapon already had 22 base status, now it has 30 base status. It's on the same like level of the Deluzhnoa spear for this status, which is crazy. And on top of that, now your smokescreen area has the same effect, but it has the radius increased by 2 meters, which doesn't sound much, but when you remember, like, it's an area that makes everyone evade by almost every skill in the game. The fact that it's increased by 2 meters and that smoke's gonna freeze the enemies that are going through that is actually a pretty big deal. And I think it's actually a mega one of the strongest buffs as well. I'm very curious to see this in action. The Deluzhnoa SNS is a weird one, as always. It got a perception buff, so that's the status line that it got. And now, on top of the skill that it had, when there's an 80% chance of reducing all defense by 500 for 6 seconds, which is quite a bit. And 500 defense is a decent chunk versus DPSs, and but versus other things doesn't matter that much. So it's not that big of a deal. I actually wish they buffed this more, but it is what it is. It does get more damage reduction on the upgraded part, so and more shield block chance. Alright, the Deluzhnoa Spear was one of the best ones on raw status on the game. So it didn't get more raw status, it got cooldown, but I think a lot of people are going to be plenty happy with more cooldown. And all of the changes, everything is kind of the same from what I have skirmed, but now what it does is it has a chance of applying Weaken that decreases the heavy damage resistance of the enemy. So it means they're going to be able to do more heavy attack damage on the enemy depending if they have the damage resistance or not, right? It's not, I mean, it's hard to tell if it's going to be very impactful because there's a lot of people that don't build have damage resistance, but I imagine, of course, versus tanks and healers is always going to be useful. Depends if it's going to go through the threshold of like 100%. I'm not sure how that is calculated, to be honest. The Deluzhnoa staff got a pretty nice buff. It got critical hit chance, which is always going to be welcome. I felt like a lot of weapons got critical hit chance or bonus critical hit chance, which is gonna... It's interesting because it makes endurance less effective overall, of course. Because we are not getting endurance buffs in other things, we're just getting on the weapons. So the weapons getting crit are very impactful on the meta itself, like the numbers, right? But regardless, what changed here is also pretty strong. The passive is basically the same, but the only thing is now, not only its lows, it decreases all heavy attack evasion by 150, and that's pretty big. It's basically removing 150 heavy attack evasion from the enemy, from all evasions, which means it's not only going to be great for you with the 1 extra damage, but for all other classes that are going to be targeting those enemies, they're going to be basically getting 150 heavy attack, right? Because everyone has at least a little bit of heavy attack evasion, and tanks and healers have a bunch usually. So yeah, it's a really strong buff. I think it's also one of the best ones. And that's it for the Cardi and the Deluzhnoa specs. I think those were really strong. They're gonna take a bit unless you Mega Whale, of course. It's similar to the E.Tevent and the Bellinger when they release. It's gonna take a few months to gather everything that you need on the fragments. It's gonna be 90 as well from what I have seen. The buffs are actually very significant, and I'm very excited to see a few of them, like the E.Tevent daggers. Oh, sorry, not E.Tevent, the Deluzhnoa daggers, and the Deluzhnoa bow is actually one that I really want to see how it works. But regardless, let's move on for the buffs of the old Archbosses. From what I have checked, the passives don't change, okay? The only thing that changed, it got usually a buff on the minimum and maximum damage, and an extra status line. So for example here, the E.Tevent bow, a lot of people are going to be happy with this, got a buff in the damage, which is great, but he also got crit hit, so like I was saying, like it affects the endurance of the game, and it's just always nice to get more crit on those type of weapons. The E.Tevent dagger, I hate to see buffed, but it got buffed. So what happened here is it now gives perception, which is an insane status to give to the E.Tevent daggers. Like actually broken because it was one of the weak points of the E.Tevent Dagger was the bonus damage and only having dex like one status line. Given perception, which is a hit slash buff duration, status is crazy. It just made the E.Tevent Dagger even stronger than it was, but that's the point, right? It buffed everything else, so that's the change for the E.Tevent Daggers. The E.Tevent Greatsword is one that people have been using less and less, right? But here's the buff. It got some damage buff, which is nice. And it got crit, just like everything else. I mean, it's kind of nice. I think the stun chance line is kind of whatever, but it is what it is. The E.Tevent Orb got some damage buffs, which is also nice. Everything got damage buffs, I'm just repeating myself. And it got cooldown. So cooldown is always useful, but it's not really that big of a deal. It's nice though. The E.Tevent one, again, base damage increase is nice for curses. What we got here was dexterity, so that was pretty nice compared to the other things that we could have gotten. Dexterity actually helps because it's just raw status, and with the one having only wisdom, it was really hard to build around it, like the base raw E.Tevent one. So this is gonna help to build a lot of things. It's really nice. And the Bellinger now, sorry. So the Bellinger changes, the Expo got buff from the base damage, that's nice. And it got perception, really good change. I would assume a lot of Expo users are happy, even though they probably don't use Queen Bellinger anymore. It's a nice change. The Bellinger Spear got attack speed, which is interesting. I mean, it makes the death rumble faster and some other skills faster. Imagine the cast speed. So it's a nice combination, but it's weird because it's usually used with bruisers and tanks. And not that they could not use the attack speed, but is that I imagine they would rather have other status than attack speed. So I don't know how I feel about this change. It's one of the weirdest one to me. The attack speed definitely could be a better status in my opinion for those tanks and bruisers. But it is what it is. Moving on. The Bellinger SNS, I checked in game, this one is wrong on the quest log. It's not just strength and collision, it already has a damage reduction on the game. But what it got is fortitude. So 8 of fortitude on the SNS is huge. It's like one of the biggest changes other than the E.Tevent Dagger probably. Queen Bellinger SNS got like one of the biggest buffs possible, because this allows them to build a lot of things without having to worry or chase fortitude, which is a pretty big deal when it comes to tanking, because you want to reach those 70, those 80 fortitudes, right? Or even higher. So having fortitude on the SNS, on the weapon itself, is a pretty big deal, because it's really hard to get fortitude without getting very specific pieces of gear. This one is one of the ones that I'm most excited, because I actually want to test it, so I'm very happy with this change, very, very happy. And finally, the last one, the Bellinger Staff. So the Bellinger Staff got Strength, which is a little bit weird, but it's also like free status, so free status is never gonna be bad. But of course, if it was something like Dexterity or Perception, it probably would be much better, because Strength is a bit weird, I think. But it's regardless a buff and more in overall more damage, and gonna help you build around it better. So overall, those were the changes. Those were the buffs on the old weapons, and those were the new awakened versions of Deluzhnoa and Cardi. I'm mega excited to see some of those in game. It's just gonna be a bit annoying because it's gonna take a while, but that's part of the game. That's part of the grind. On one note, if you have a legendary evolved skill, like the node skill, right, for the legendary, the right weapon, now you can turn that node back into your old Archboss weapon, so you can change your skill core for the old weapon that you used to make this skill core. It's just gonna cost you some materials. I don't remember it by head, but you're gonna have to spend some materials to deconstruct those skill cores. But it's kind of nice, because if you want to go back, for example, I have the E.Tevent Heroic, right? And I might want to go back to the E.Tevent itself, so I can use it and then transfer the one. So it's nice to have this option, because the E.Tevent now is really solid as a weapon by itself, because it has the dexterity stats and it has better base damage. So I'm not that dependent on the Heroic one. So yeah, that's very nice. And again, I just want to put this out here. Everything that I use, everything that I learned was from this guy. It was from Joey. So go check him on Twitch TV. All credit goes to him. I just put everything side by side so we could compare it better, like on the on with the old weapons, right? The old buffs. But that's about it. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and see ya.